From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to watch this year's World Cup without getting all hot and bothered by those giant midfield calf muscles. And now, the podcast host who would never allow opposition players to go strolling casually through his midfield, Pete Dominic!
No way! I never would allow for that in my midfield. Thank you very much, Pete. It was great to see you and so many others at our hangout on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. We watched the game together. I'll talk more about that. Hello and welcome to the first full week of December. I'm not sure why I'm the welcoming party, but if you listen to this show on Monday morning, the 5th of December, well, then I guess I am. Good to be with you. I've got two excellent guests joining me on today's show to explain things that are happening and that happened and that are about to happen. Maura, Quint helped me understand the ethics or lack of ethics and the reporting and responses to the, quote, Twitter files and so much more. Maura is always a great person to talk about what's going on in the world and our lives, and today is no exception. And Professor Eric Segall joins me to talk about the gloom and doom of this week's Supreme Court arguments that we are about to hear. One dealing with civil and human rights and LGBT people, to be specific, but who knows what's next. And the other dealing with, well, the future of America, as Segall puts it. The headline about that case, by the way, at the Associated Press, it's not just Segall, is Supreme Court weighs most important case on democracy. Talking, of course, about the gerrymandered districts case brought by the North Carolina legislature. It's a Republican-led challenges. It's asking the justices for a novel ruling that could significantly increase the power of state lawmakers over elections for Congress and the presidency. The court set to hear arguments Wednesday, and I'll be talking with Eric Segall about those and more as well. Two great guests and another busy weekend in news. Of course, it kicked off with the appearance of Kanye West on Alex Jones' show, saying all kinds of crazy, insane things about hating Jews and loving Hitler and loving Nazis. And Alex Jones, by the way, over the weekend, he filed for personal bankruptcy, I guess. I don't know what that means. Kanye West was then banned again from Twitter. And some people argued, including Ben Shapiro, he shouldn't have been banned from Twitter because he didn't incite violence against anybody at all, much less on Twitter. People were making the argument. Anyway, apparently Elon Musk saw fit that he had to get rid of his buddy Kanye West, who he just let back on the platform, I think is my understanding. And then, of course, Elon Musk tried to control the news cycle by teasing a story that would be a blockbuster, huge story. And, of course, he gave it to former respected journalist Matt Taibbi to disseminate on Twitter. The subject of the weekend's big story from Elon Musk turned out to be no story at all. It is being referred to as the Twitter files. So new Twitter owner, ghostly white cartoon villain Elon Musk turns over this information dump from Twitter's internal moderation back in 2019 about the Hunter Biden laptop story, which the New York Post had just 3 weeks before election. And there was a lot of controversy around because a lot of folks thought it might have been some kind of propaganda, some kind of Russian intel operation. And the story then gets disseminated over the weekend by Matt Taibbi on this Twitter thread, eagerly glommed by some, panned by a lot more, as an overhyped and misleading package of cherry-picked internal documents that did not amount to much upon further scrutiny. And that is according to a lot of folks on the right, including Fox News' Will Cain, our old buddy Will Cain, our old buddy Matt Taibbi, a whole bunch of former regular stand-up guests who have gone rogue. I mean, I just can't believe it, but maybe I should. Anyway, so Will Cain's on Fox News over the weekend, and he had the dude from the repair shop on the show, and he said to him, he said, there's no smoking gun in Elon Musk's Twitter files. That's Will Cain, Mediaite founder, ABC News legal correspondent, and host of his own show on News Nation, Dan Abrams. He said on Mediaite, it's stunning that with access to all the internal emails at Twitter, that they don't have a single smoking gun that implicates a government leader or any campaign in wrongdoing. Even before Musk's characterization of what was there, I expected there would be something more damning from someone relevant. Even the New York Post writer who is behind this story, and she's wrote a book about Hunter Biden, like it's called The Laptop from Hell. She seems to be... She's a columnist there. I don't know anybody who reads or respects her. I've not heard anything about this woman, but even she was on with Tucker Carlson. She's the leading light of the Hunter Biden story at the New York Post. And she said the revelations are not what she'd call bombshells. She said, look, I think we see quite a bit that's useful. It's not really the smoking gun we'd hoped for. I feel that Elon Musk he must have held back some material. So now the Republicans in the House Judiciary Committee are going to bring Twitter employees before Congress over the Hunter Biden laptop censorship stuff. And so we're not hearing the end of this. This one crazy Republican congressional candidate called for violent and armed revolution over the hyped up, stupid, nothing information dump handling of the Hunter Biden laptop story at Twitter. So it's not over. Unfortunately, we're going to have to hear more about this, the fallout, the reputations of Matt Taibbi, what was ever left of that. Barry Weiss apparently is disseminating this, and we're going to have to hear investigations about it. So Maura Quint did a bit of a deep dive on it, and she gave us some of her insight, which I thought was really interesting during my conversation with her. If I got any of that wrong, if I'm missing something about it, please let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I want to try to look at this as unbiased as I can, as objective as I can, and I want to look at everything that way. So if I'm not, let me know. Just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, or tell me at one of our hangouts. We had actually a great hangout on Saturday morning while we watched the U.S. men's soccer national soccer team lose to the better team, the Netherlands. I criticized them publicly for conceding to lose. I don't think they should have conceded their loss. They lost 3-1, and they never should have admitted loss if they didn't learn anything from the last president. Or I thought Joe Biden should have called up FIFA and said, we just need 3 more goals than we have. But that's not the president we have anymore. And so we lost and we are out. The U.S. men are out. But it was a lot of fun to watch with, I don't know, how many people were there? Like 15, 20 people. And I really enjoyed it. So just another great benefit of being a part of this community. I was so happy to see you guys. And by the way, Maura Quint is set to join us this Thursday night's hangout. We're just going to play a game, ask her some questions, have some fun. She's always a great guest, and she's about to join me. But she's going to be there Thursday night. She's going to try to stop in, and I'm really looking forward to having her there with a larger group because so many people love when she's on the show almost every Monday. Quickly did want to mention at least 2 other stories that I'm certainly paying some attention to. Unfortunately, the one about President Trump declaring that he should be president again. And the only reason I'm watching this is because he has announced that he's running for president again, and it's possible he could be the nominee. So you have to kind of pay attention to what he's saying. But after the Twitter files stuff came out, he jumped all over that and said that we need to throw out the presidential elections of 2020. He was ranting and raving on his stupid Twitter-like social media platform, which apparently is not doing very well. Truth Social. Anyway, he said that we need to have a new election and that we need to throw out the Constitution. A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. That's what he typed out or recited to somebody to write, and then probably said, read it back to me. Okay, go send it. Something weird like that. So a whole bunch of Republicans now are going to have to answer not only why does your party's leader hang out with Nazis, but why does he want to throw out the Constitution? And they're all going to say, well, listen, I don't pay attention to or agree with everything that Donald Trump has ever said, that's for sure. And I don't want to look backwards. I want to look ahead. And then the reporter has to say, yeah, no, I'm looking ahead. He is running for president and he wants to kill the Constitution, throw it out, be reinstalled as president. You're going to have to comment on that, sir. Sorry, Congressman. So there was a lot of that on the Sunday shows. The other stories I'm following, what's happening in Iran. I'm subscribed to Jill Filipovich's The Week in Women, which I highly recommend. It's a quick rundown of women's rights news from around the world. And Jill is just the best. She's been on the show several times, but she, as well as a lot of other people, obviously talking about what's happening in Iran. They may be shutting down their morality police, or maybe not. The reporting is coming fast and furiously from a number of different sources. But the New York Times reporting that an Iranian official said that the nation is closing down the hated police force, but the Iranian government hasn't confirmed the story, and there are some indications that actually no, the morality police will stay in business. Whatever the case, Jill writes, the government is still enforcing the mandatory hijab law. That was the pretext for the detention of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old girl who was killed while in police custody. Amini's death kicked off months-long women life freedom protests that have been roiling that country that much of the world hopes will take down this vicious regime. That's Jill Filipovich writing in The Week in Women, which I highly recommend you subscribe to. I'm glad that I get it. She writes about all of these other stories from around the world, which are so valuable for all of us to know about what is happening. All right. The other story is that I'm paying a lot of attention to. I saw this Sunday morning, I think thanks to Tina Winsett, is this North Carolina county that may be without power after what looks to be a targeted attack. A terrorist attack on multiple electrical substations has left 60% of North Carolina's Moore County without power over the weekend in what local and state authorities are investigating as a criminal occurrence, and what I hear editorially am saying is a terrorist attack. If it's a criminal occurrence, if they did it on purpose and they did it for the reasons that are being reported, then it's a terrorist attack. And those reasons are that it was in connection to a drag show. The power went out during a drag show in downtown Southern Pines that attracted a significant amount of protesters and police presence. The show ended early because of the power outages, and one of the leading protesters, I'm not going to say her name, claimed on social media that sheriff's deputies questioned her about the outages after she posted that she knew why it occurred. She said, I told them that God works in mysterious ways and is responsible for the outage. So it's hard to know if this was, in fact, a terrorist attack. But if it was done, if energy substations were targeted because for this reason, then, in fact, I don't know what else you could call it. All right, so those are a few of the big stories that I'm following, and I would love your thoughts on them, your sources, what you're reading about them. And, of course, I'd always love to hear what stories that you're following that you think are important and impactful that I should be talking to a guest expert on the show about. Last Thursday, the Sandman took me out to lunch. Longtime listener, Sandman. That's how he refers to himself. Love the guy. And he was talking about just how he loves learning stuff on the show and how he wants to learn more stuff on the show. And he named all these different subjects that he's interested in. And it really got me thinking a lot, Sandman, over the weekend and wanting to do that too. So I'm looking hard and would love for your recommendations, as always, on who I should have on the show and what we should be talking about. Any kind of undercovered subject or issue or movement or technology or problem in the world or that you're dealing with, and a suggested guest that I should be talking to about it. Maybe that guest is you. Hey, pitch yourself. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That's all I'm saying. And now here's Colin Jost from this past Saturday Night Live weekend update, wrapping up the whole circus around Kanye West and Alex Jones. Take it away, Colin Jost.
You guys are not going to believe this, but Alex Jones and Kanye West got together this week, and it didn't go great. Kanye West made anti-Semitic jokes and said, I like Hitler, which is also the password he used to get into Mar-a-Lago. At this point, I don't think Kanye is off his meds so much as he's immune to them. We're basically dealing with the Omicron variant of Kanye. You know, like we thought he'd fade away, but now we realize we may have to live with the brain fog of long-haul Kanye. What I don't understand about this Kanye stuff is if Jews do control the media, then how are we still seeing a new interview with Kanye every day? Also, if Jews control the media, explain the 80-foot Christmas tree outside of NBC.
All right. I love the Weekend Update with Michael Che and Colin Jost. Always very, very funny. That's this past Saturday's Saturday Night Live. And now it's time to get to our regular Monday guest. I always love when she is able to join me. We connected late Sunday afternoon. She's still a little bit under the weather, so I was really happy that she joined me again. You can find her over running the wealth tax campaign at Americans for Tax Reform. She co-founded taxmarch.org. She is a hilarious writer and humorist whose writing has appeared in all of the major publications. She could write for just about any late night host, if you ask me. And you can have her on your podcast. Maybe reach out to her. She does a lot of people's podcasts. I just can't say enough about her. I love her take on all things about the world and life, you name it. We had another great discussion, and you should follow her on Twitter while that's still a thing, at Behind Your Back. And she's set to join us this Thursday night. If you're a subscriber, if you're a listener, and you want to hang out with us, then you should just come by. Maura, Quint will be there Thursday night. Sign up now, standupwithpete.com right now to hang out with us, and you'll get an email and a link, and you can meet Maura virtually on Thursday night. There she is, Maura Quint. Maura, Mondays, it is another week in America as we get closer to the end of the year. How are you? Thank you for joining me.
I'm okay. I'm still sick, so I'm not fully out of the woods, but otherwise, it's December. Yeah. We're like, this is the coasting period of time, right? Like, you just keep going, just put in just enough effort and just get through it, because you're going to be, boozed up soon for the holidays, or whatever it up.
And by soon, you mean this afternoon, folks.
I mean, like when we hang up. Yeah.
Well, right. I have a lot of things I want to talk with you about. First of all, I just wanted to see, I had to get something off my chest to somebody. And of course, You're one of my favorite people to talk to and to have make fun of me. And maybe you won't make fun of me. Maybe you won't judge. I hope that you do. But I did mention this on Twitter.
I hope that you do. Okay.
I've been very interested in a celebrity relationship. Andrew Shue, the former star of Melrose Place, and he's like a soccer player. He's Elizabeth Shue's brother. I've always liked him. I don't know why. I met him he used to come to my gym. I used to see him a lot. He's never friendly. I don't know why I like him, but I think he's handsome.
Okay.
He's married to this other lady who's on Good Morning America named Amy Rohrbach. And then apparently she had an affair. She's in a relationship with this guy, TJ Holmes. And the reason I'm kind of interested, one reason, he's like the best looking guy in the world. He was married, and they're like the morning anchors, and they're both married, and they're having an affair, and I can't get enough of it, and I want to be done with it, but please show me some grace.
Why are you so obsessed with it? That was the like New York, the moaning news, right? I think I just saw the like terrible headline about it, and that was it.
Oh, like
why are you so wrapped up in it?
I don't know. I'm interested in it, and I click on it, I read about it.
Is it because you want to sleep with both TJ and Andrew Shue? Is that it?
Probably.
Like you're just like trying to figure out which one's going to be single?
Probably. I'm trying to play my cards right and trying to strategize. Yeah.
You got to track that stuff. I mean, like, you can't be caught unawares. You're not the only one. There's definitely a line. So you got to you got to play your odds real smart.
I always think that when someone has an affair, like whether it's, no matter who it is, much less a high profile, don't you think that there's some consideration given to the spouses, the other two spouses? Like, might as well. Do you think that happens very often?
Oh, that they should just sleep together. Just because it's like,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's unfair, because not only did you just get cheated on, but now your spouse who cheated on you is like fundamentally dictating who you now get to sleep with. That seems like bullshit. Like, you maybe can sleep with someone else, but you shouldn't have to be like, I guess I've got to sleep with you now. Like, that doesn't seem right. Unless you're in like a rom-com, in which case everybody should just swap partners.
I just wonder how often that ever happens when the other two get on the phone at some point.
I do think it does happen. Like, I mean, I don't think it happens with a tremendous amount of frequency, but I definitely have heard of it. Like, I've definitely heard of the calling up the other person and being like, hey, just want to let you know that your husband has been sleeping with my wife. And like, there are times when that bonding situation happens and it's just like, well, I guess you wanna, or just like out of anger, but it's not, I've never seen it like bloom into a relationship. Or anything.
A woman I went to high school with
had an affair with her neighbor, and then they ended up the couples just swapped spouses and lived happily ever after on the same street.
That is really fascinating. I mean, like, in a way, you can then kind of be like, well, I guess we were right to cheat because look how it all worked out.
I don't know.
Like, I mean, you can kind of spin it like that.
So you're telling me you didn't even know about that story, much less have interest in it?
So, I mean, I saw the headline, but I don't know who any of these people are. When you said Andrew Shue, I was like, finally, a name I know.
I don't. I know who they are, but I don't know anything. Like, why am I interested? It's wrong. I felt very guilty.
It's also that, like, as the world collapses around us, we look for, more sort of detached entertainment. And I mean, obviously, these people's lives are not necessarily our entertainment, but in a way, it's being delivered in that sort of thing.
Tried to stay away from gossip, but this one somehow it got to me. All right, more important issues. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on the fact that Democrats in the House Ways and Means Committee finally got Trump's taxes and why that's important and what you think it means, if anything.
I'm very wary about that. I will be really honest. I mean, obviously, that's an issue dear to my heart.
Yeah.
As a co-founder of Tax March in 2017, this is a drum we have been beating for years and years and years. And one of the biggest impediments to our actually seeing this through has been Congressman Richie Neal. And he's not been aggressive about this. When he's had the opportunity to go for it, he stalled, he waited. And I fear, and I don't know entirely, but from what I understand, I fear that he did not actually request a significant amount of years, that he only has obtained taxes from far more recent dealings. And the stuff that we really want to see is several years back. And I don't think they have that in hand, which is incredibly frustrating. It's also frustrating given the timing. We're in a lame duck. They only have a short period of time to get through all of this before it is then fundamentally handed over. So the way that it's been handled is, I mean, I don't like to sort of spin out with the you'd think they're trying to sabotage it, but it kind of feels like, hey, we can say we did it without doing it.
Don't you think? How do those
kind of infuriating?
How do they not leak? The public should get to see every leader's taxes, and I want to see them, and I think they should leak.
I mean, I would like to see them too, but if I understand again correctly, I mean, they might only have from like 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. 6 years, I think, including the year before.
Which is not a significant period of time. We need to see stuff from 2013 to really, and 2012 to actually get a picture as to what we're dealing with. Those were periods of time that weren't really particularly under dispute. So it's a little bit infuriating. Previously we'd seen presidents as they were coming into office releasing 10 years of tax returns.
And we should see everybody, the mayors, the governor, anybody who is getting taxpayer money and distributing it and contracts and government contracts. We should see where they're making money. It's how that's not like a...
We absolutely should. It is beyond an economic issue. It is absolutely a democracy issue. Yeah. It is vitally important for us to know exactly who our elected officials are working for, what their business dealings are, how they're benefiting themselves while they're in office. I mean, like, these are things that matter when we're looking at elected officials. So, it's quite frustrating. And I hate to say that I'm not all that excited about this particular, development. It really seems like, we can say we did it without actually trying to do anything that would be really worthwhile.
Okay. Well, that is a drum that you've been beating, Trump's taxes and taxes in general, obviously, especially on the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, whatever people want to call them. Another, though, great drum that you have been beating for years now has been about free speech and how we should understand it and how we should talk about it and what it means. And you've got some great tweets about this, some that you've tweeted long ago, some that you've re-upped. But I have been wanting to talk with somebody about this. I've been bringing it up in a couple of conversations. But where do you start with this? Where did you begin beating on this drum? When did this start to become an issue where people started yelling and screaming that their free speech was being stifled and with a lack of understanding, ignorance about what it means, free speech, the First Amendment?
I got on Twitter in 2009, 2010 or so, and I was not like trying to be overtly political at the time. I was just kind of like making random jokes about whatever crossed my path and whatever I was interested in that moment. And I did like a search for myself at some point, and I had like free speech jokes from day one because people have fundamentally misunderstood what free speech is forever. It's just gotten louder, and people with a lot more power are purposefully misidentifying what it is, which is absolutely infuriating.
Yeah, and dangerous.
And I think is driving a lot of us crazy. Oh, incredibly dangerous. I mean, everything that is happening around us right now continues to be extremely, extremely dangerous and terrifying and frustrating. So I can really understand why you'd see like, hey, 2 morning news anchors are boning. Yeah, I'm going to read that instead. That seems better.
Thank you again for going back to that to justify my departures from those things that are more consequential. But what is your kind of thesis on what people get wrong and misinterpret?
Well, people have a tendency to sort of take that as some sort of blanket thing, like free speech means you can say what you want whenever, and that people have to let you, which is such a weird, it's such a weird, I don't even want to say misunderstanding because it is so like obtuse, and you really have to try hard because you know you can't say anything you want all the time, consequence free. You know that you don't necessarily have that right. You know that you can't, I mean, let alone something like being in a movie theater and yelling fire. You know, that's obviously something.
Either you let me perform my angry erotic poems at your mother's funeral, or you don't believe in free speech. Granted, per the First Amendment is something you tweeted back in 2017, which is a very funny example of what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say too, like, if you're just in a movie theater and all you're saying is, I hate this movie fucking sucks, but you're yelling it out, the movie theater has the right to kick you out of that movie theater because you don't have free speech there. You don't necessarily, like, not in the way that people are demanding it. I can say anything I want anywhere I am. No, that is not actually what it is. Of course, I would imagine every single person listening to your show fully is familiar with the First Amendment and what it actually protects you from, but it protects you from persecution by the government, which is a wholly separate thing. It
but
does
basically, anytime you're being a dick, creating a disturbance, making someone feel uncomfortable, the manager of the In-N-Out Burger or the pilot of the plane has the right to be like, listen, you can't do that here. You're making everybody uncomfortable. I don't know what your deal is, but you got to go.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. And what's more, people also have this sort of free from consequence idea. You can go in the world, like you can walk down the street and you can say whatever shit you want. The thing is, your neighbors then get to say, let's not invite them over anymore. I don't like them. And you can do that in any version of a public space. And people have the right to not hear you. We don't have to hear you. And you know, actually, it's kind of interesting to me because I've been getting so much like hate and attack lately that it's really, really ramped up more than I've ever seen it before. And I had one person who, oh God, they sent me this whole thing that I had blocked them. I block everyone on Twitter all the time. I just if I like open up a tweet and I just see people acting like assholes in it, I just block them preemptively. I don't ever have to have interacted with them because, you know, I don't need a place that I spend a lot of time in to be populated by jerks.
Yep.
Like, that's not good for my mental health. So I just block away very, very liberally. And some random person sent me an email that, because I blocked them, they were going to come after me. They were, you know, like all these sort of threats. But that was like, it was a really interesting thing. And this was pointed out to me actually by my friend, Jeb, who's Moboot on Twitter. And he actually was like, you know what, this is fundamentally what the right talks about when they get all upset about cancel culture and, you know, and free speech and all of these things. They believe that you have like injured them because you have said, I'm not willing to hear you. I don't want to hear you. And that is like an absolute affront to them. They think that's worth like, well, now you should die because you've decided you don't want to hear from me. It's like at that same level for them. They absolutely walk through the world thinking that everyone has to listen to them. And
that's how I feel about people who end their subscriptions to my show.
Everyone has to listen to you. Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, I can understand that feeling, and I just don't have the time or energy to send threats out to everybody. That's terrible.
Well,
I'm
you
sorry
can hire this guy because he's great. He did a good job.
Yeah,
he was on top of it.
I'm sorry that happened, obviously. And you said the volume has been more that people.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was one, and then I got one today, and just before I was getting on this show, that was talking about all the ways that they wanted me to die. I've gotten a lot of those lately, which I hadn't like. I've gotten lots of hate before, but it's usually in at replies. I actually haven't gotten too much, but these are all coming like they're going to my emails and they're sending like long screeds, which is like, okay, I mean, if that's what you feel like you need to do, but the level of violence is way higher than usual. Like when I would get emails before, I mean, occasionally I got some violent ones, but it was much more like, you're a dummy and you're really stupid and you're ugly. And do you know how old you are? Like things like that. But now it's much more like, you should die and here's how you should die. And I hope I hope I'm there to help you die, which, good luck. Okay.
that kind of thing can affect you in any number of ways or no ways at all. You build some kind of a thick skin for it, but it's always got to be shocking.
I got a lot of calluses right now, but I will say, when there are cars like parked outside on the street, outside my house now, it's kind of like, I'm going to lock that door and draw the curtain because I don't know right now.
I'm sorry that happens. It's awful. I don't have anything really to say about that other than how terrible that people tend to be especially when they can be anonymous, but even more. I
mean, look, I had and I've also gotten a ton of hate. I had 200 hateful at replies the other day. And among them, I want to say there were about 7 chins in the whole group. And I also, as we're coming up for the holidays, I think there's a whole chins. I was being really mean about these people's appearances.
Oh, they don't have, they're chinless people.
Yeah, that's right.
The chinless.
But I think as we're coming up for the holidays right now too, there's a whole crop of people that are realizing that their kids are not going to come home. They don't want to see them. They don't want to spend time with them. So there's a lot of anger swirling for a lot of people. They got to direct it somewhere. So
you're saying that the people who are angry with you are specifically upset that nobody likes them?
Including their family. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
They probably are lonely, trying to get attention. I mean, it seems like a thing that if you had people in your life, much less, a few people that you loved or loved you, that you wouldn't spend a lot of time engaging in that, I would imagine. But
they're acting out. It's okay. We all have tantrums, and we have, now we have someone like Elon Musk and Donald Trump still, and all of them. They're just more and more showing the way for how to be a grown man and throw a temper tantrum.
Yeah, you mentioned Elon Musk. You mentioned Donald Trump, of course. And over the weekend, he announced he would cancel. He thought the Constitution should be canceled and they should reinstall him into office. But I did want to ask you, speaking of tantrums, did you pay attention to Kanye Musk's shenanigans, his masked appearance on Alex Jones, who I think I watched a good amount of it and I thought it was fascinating because Alex Jones is pushing back on him. He's like, oh, easy, that's... Which
is absolutely infuriating. Alex Jones had him on because Alex Jones believes all these things. Now he gets to be like, oh, I'm going to kind of equivocate it a little bit so that people will think I'm a better guy. But, whatever. He's a piece of shit. These are terrible people. They're absolutely terrible people. And they are getting louder and they are platforming one another. And no one speaking to Kanye West at this point in time can pretend that I'm going to have a conversation in the marketplace of ideas. No, you're hawking wares is what you're doing. You're out there selling his stuff.
Right.
And you're excited that it's on the market. That's it. I mean, everyone who's speaking to him at this point, 100% is so happy that they have a black man saying the things that they feel like they're not quite fully allowed to say, not that bluntly. They're thrilled.
I wonder if there's anywhere else he can go or if he'll continue to pop up. I'm done with this. I'm done with this Musk. I'm done with the Kanye, Nick Fuentes, Alex Joneses, Trump's, these 5 people specifically. It's been a couple weeks now where we've been having to, and it seemed like it really bottomed out with the whole Nazi Hitler stuff. And then all of these people obviously being asked about it, Republicans and the Sunday shows, are we, how many more days, where does he keep popping up and how many?
It doesn't matter where he keeps popping up because he's already emboldened Elon Musk, everyone who wanted to be. What?
Elon Musk, I guess, canceled his Twitter account. Kanye.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Elon Musk, who's just like, it all needs to be very transparent. Oh, by the way, I make up rules and I just kick people off when I want.
Yeah.
We have to follow the laws. Oh, well, no laws were broken, but I didn't like this. I mean, he's just a petty dictator and a lying dictator. I mean, what a fuck. I really, truly believe at this point that Elon Musk is actually really, really dumb. I truly believe that. I'm sure that's going to bring me more death threats, but I do not think that is an intelligent man. I think it's a lucky man and an arrogant man and a man who has, people have taken his posturing and the way that he moves in the world. And they have decided that because he is such a sort of piece of shit, he must be brilliant and he must be a tremendous mind. But, that's the thing with money. Once you have it, it's very hard to get rid of it. Everything you do can be spun into wins. And that's what he's done.
Well said. I wanted to ask you about I don't know what they were calling them, the Twitter files. Elon Musk gave Matt Taibbi and apparently Barry Weiss as well. I haven't followed up on it today. But one succinct tweet from my friend Allison Gill at Mueller, she writes, am I getting this right? The right wing is mad that they didn't get to see naked photos of Hunter Biden. How close have you followed that over the weekend? The Twitter files and Elon Musk working with Matt Taibbi to release these internal communications that Twitter had about reporting on Hunter Biden's laptop and what was on it or what wasn't.
Yeah, predominantly what they showed is that there are human individuals behind content moderation. As what they showed is, hey, here's what Elon's doing right now, just making choices based on his own set of, of values and conversations. I think Matt Taibbi's was not reporting. I think it was bullshit. Everything he put out had already been posted. So it was really him sort of copying and pasting from other places.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it wasn't even new. And I mean, I think, is it worth talking about who's getting favors from who? And I mean, I suppose, but for a fact that what you're doing is putting out huge fodder for right-wing news media to just latch onto and go off on. That's all you're doing. You're not actually adding anything to the conversation that is productive. And he's decided he wants to be a useful tool for the right and has made himself one.
It's all they have to do. They did this in my town at the Board of Education fight. They FOIA requested notes, the notes from the board meeting where they discussed how people were talking about CRT, shortly after George Floyd. So the word CRT was in there. And then they released the notes. They FOIA'd them, the white supremacist guys, and then they released them and they posted them up on Facebook. But then they wrote a narrative around them that said they said something that, of course, they didn't. It's the same thing here. The way I bring it up is because this is a common tactic where you could just post pieces of a cherry-picked or not even whole files, but then no one's reading them. You write a narrative around them or you say it on your radio show or your talk show, and then it becomes whatever you want it to be. Look at these files. No one's reading them. They just cherry-pick whatever. And it doesn't say that at all, and they get away with it. It's a really common tactic. It's super dangerous.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating in this case because, you're also talking about content moderation. There was a reference to Trump asking for things being taken down and having that taken down. But of course, nothing was talked about what that was. The focus was only on the Hunter Biden stuff. I mean, do I think that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden, I have no allegiance to these people. I don't think that they're wonderful people. But Joe Biden was not the president at that time. And what they're talking about, seems to be revenge porn for the most part. There is, I guess, potentially some suppression to the laptop story. And I did kind of do a deep dive because I wanted to understand. Yeah, a little bit. And basically, it seems like I want to say 2013 it was, 2015, I don't know, something like that. Hunter Biden was involved in this Chinese energy sale or trade or something. He made money with several other people. And there was one email that was taken from the laptop that was basically trying to map out who was getting money from this. And it was 20% to 4 different people. And then there was a note saying 10% to H, which is Hunter, for the big guy. That's it. That's the quote. And the right has spun this into, well, that was going, the big guy was Joe Biden. Joe Biden profited off of this, and he's profited and is now in the pocket of the Chinese government. That's that seems to be the crux of what they think has happened, and that the Bidens are trying to cover up this story. Now, I have no idea. I really don't know. And in terms of government corruption and who's making money off of anything deals, I mean, like, yeah, sure, that's, I guess, worth looking at. But holy hell, is it so far down on the list? Because we're talking about so many elected officials who have just nakedly and blatantly profited while in office, while holding office, in all sorts of incredibly ridiculous, awful ways. I mean, obviously, we know Trump has done a ton, but like, even if that's your primary thing, start with congressional stock purchases. I mean, like, there's so many places where sitting elected officials are growing their wealth in extreme ways while in office, and we're not taking any oversight into that. We're not doing anything. So this like little story off to the side is, I mean, like, again, it's on the list, but it's not the top of the list. There are so many other much more extreme examples of that sort of thing. And so this is just getting really cherry picked by the right, who don't care about any of the other things.
Right.
They don't.
That's the thing, of
shit.
course, that just you can't respect about a person. If you don't have a standard, it doesn't matter who did this type of crime, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. If you don't have a standard, then
if there's a crime, I mean, this doesn't, like, we don't know.
No, I'm saying, but in general, this idea that it's okay if my team does it, but if your team does it, it's wrong. That's wrong for any human adult person to feel in any situation. It's a poor ethic. It's preposterous, and it's hard to respect someone who looks past the crimes of their friends and even family and party members to prosecute the even pettier crimes of another, even though we don't have an example of that here. It's
incredibly frustrating. And this has actually been something that has been making me crazy for years and years and years now, because I feel as though I've watched in real time the idea of hypocrisy just fade. Like, I feel as though growing up, or like, I even like, that it was a big deal to be called a hypocrite. That was something like you really didn't want. You would take care to try and make sure that no one could call you a hypocrite. Right. That was a big accusation, and it's gone now. It's completely gone.
Well,
it's like,
is it
they
connected
do not
to
care,
shame?
especially on the right.
It's connected to like shame and integrity. Like that's a value or not. Like you look at somebody like Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham, or I don't know, there's so many other people. And
I don't want to say though that it's just even the right that has like that it's only eroded on one side. I think it's societally really slipped away. I mean, there are still people individually for whom it matters, but I've seen it on the left too.
There's no doubt about it.
I've seen it in the Democratic Party too.
Sure.
And it's it really, really bothers me, because it was such a worthwhile thing to have. It was a nice social tool that we all had at our disposal to be like, all right, what do you actually care about? What are your values? What are you lying about? What are you? It was something we could use to kind of navigate human interaction.
Yeah, I wonder how much
having it there is,
that value erodes in other types of more local relationships, more real business, family relationships. I don't know if it's societal wide that kind of value is eroded right down to folks who support people who believe that and think they can get away with it too, and they drive their giant truck over you.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's down to the local level, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know if people in their families still have this opportunity to call one another a hypocrite. I know I'm still someone who is wounded by that, or would be wounded by that.
Yep,
like it still matters to me to take care.
I absolutely agree. All right. Well, I love that conversation, and I'd love to hear what people think about it. And I always love talking to you. I hope that you feel better. And by this time next week, hopefully we'll talk and you'll be 100% physically.
I'll be nothing but jokes next week, I promise.
Thank you, Maura.
Thank you.
All right, Maura Quint, everybody, at Behind Your Back on Twitter while that's still a thing. Go follow her. Go say hello to her if you haven't. And she'll be planning to join us on Thursday night at 8 East with all listener subscribers to this show. If you're not subscribing, do it now. StandUpWithPete.com or Patreon.com/PeteDominic. All right, now it's time for my second guest on today's show. He's one of your favorites, certainly one of my favorites, a very good, close friend of mine. He is a constitutional law scholar at Georgia State University, the author of Supreme Myths and Originalism as Faith, and the host of the Supreme Myths podcast. He is here today to talk about two very important Supreme Court cases that are going to be heard this week. 303 Creative versus Elenis, which is about a web designer that is from Colorado, says the non-discrimination law violates her free speech by preventing her from being upfront about her religious beliefs and forcing her to create websites that imply support for gay marriage. And then we are set to hear, I believe, Wednesday, the 7th, Moore v. Harper, whether a state's judicial branch may nullify the regulations governing, quote, the manner of holding elections for senators and representatives prescribed by the legislature thereof, and replace them with regulations of the state court's own devising. And it's a whole mess. But Eric Segall explains it to us, and it's so important, and that's why we are starting right now with Eric Segall. On Twitter, by the way, at eSpinSegall. Also find him on TikTok, where he's very popular. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's really bad.
What's coming?
What's coming is really bad. So there's two huge, we are taping this at 5:09 on Sunday.
That's right.
Saturday, today's Saturday, 5:00. I'm not great at calendars either. It's 5:09 on Saturday. On Monday and Wednesday
on the East Coast, this first week of December, the 3rd. Go ahead.
Yeah, two huge cases.
Yep.
But one much, much, much huger than the other. In fact, the most important Supreme Court case of my lifetime is being argued on Wednesday. And I say that because Brown, I'm old, but I wasn't born when Brown was decided. So this is the most important case of my lifetime, if it comes out a certain way. Hopefully it'll be the least important case of my lifetime if it comes out correctly. Let's start with Monday.
Okay.
We are back to the what I want to say, the balance between the freedom of expression and protecting LGBTQ folks from discrimination.
Right.
So Colorado, as you might remember from a few years ago, has been on the forefront of a public accommodations law that says if you enter a business to sell to the public, you cannot discriminate in your customers on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. We had the Colorado bake shop case from years ago where a awful baker didn't want to make a cake for a same-sex wedding in Colorado. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court effectively dodged the issues by lying about the facts. Literally lying about the facts. That's old history. This time we have a woman who has not yet started designing websites for weddings, but she wants to. And there's every indication she's ready, willing, and able to do so.
Her company is called 303 Creative, thus the name of the case.
But she hasn't done it yet, and no one's asked her to do it yet. But she wants to do it, and that's fair. And she wants to say on the advertising for her website, I will not do same-sex weddings. And she doesn't want to do same-sex weddings. So Colorado
She doesn't
law,
like to do graphics. She doesn't like to do websites. If two guys or two girls are going to be women that are going to be married, she doesn't want to do their website for their wedding.
She says if they want a website designed to sell their business or to do other things, she'll serve LGBTQ people, but she will not do websites for same-sex.
If I'm a gay man with a hardware store, you'll build my website. But if I want to marry my a man, you will not do the website promoting my wedding because it's against your religion.
Correct. And well, she said it was against her religion.
Yeah.
I want to remind people that discrimination based on faith is still discrimination. Hate based on faith is still hate. But leaving that aside, but the religious issue, which was the big issue in the previous case, is not an issue in this case. The Supreme Court limited this case to free speech. She says it violates both my religious rights and my free speech rights, but this case is only about free speech. And what she is saying is, and I think she's right about this, creating a website for a wedding is an expressive activity. They're all different. I tailor them to the needs of the people getting married. I make them personally. And I simply do not want to do that for same-sex weddings. Right before we started taping this, Pete, one of your Twitter followers and mine said, why is this case ripe if she's never opened, the business hasn't been opened yet, no one's asked her to do a wedding? And you know me, I'm all about jurisdiction and standing.
Well, are you all about jurisdiction or courts? And generally speaking,
no.
Con law scholars generally about jurisdiction. I mean, it matters that there's an actual...
There has to be a case or controversy. And the question, Article 3, the Constitution says there has to be a case or controversy. Supreme Court has fucked that up beyond imagination. All con law professors, left, right, and center, agree the Supreme Court has fucked up standing beyond recognition. But there's been a rule for, actually, this is good for, I think people might learn something from this, seriously.
Good.
Since the 1930s, when Congress passed something called the Declaratory Judgment Act, there's been this idea, and it's a good idea, it actually predates the statute, that if there's a law that I want to violate, and I think and that law violates my rights, rather than violate the law and get arrested, if I file a lawsuit that says I am ready, willing, and able to violate that law, I'm going to violate that law, but before I do so, I want a court to rule that I can, because I'm a law-abiding citizen, and even though I think the law is illegal, I want a court to say that first. As long as there's a real threat of prosecution, which there is in this case, as long as there's a real threat of prosecution, that that jurisdiction is proper, and that's the right answer, Pete. We shouldn't make citizens violate the law before they can test it in court.
Oh, have we ever talked about that? That seems a little, that's not controversial?
No, not at all.
Well, I don't want...
There are some fact patterns that make it difficult. So the most famous case about this in constitutional law is 2 years before Griswold versus Connecticut was decided. That's the case that first found a right to privacy. That's the case that found that Connecticut's anti-contraception law was unconstitutional. And that's the case that led to Roe. Roe, that case that no longer exists. 2 years before that, people brought suit in Connecticut saying contraception is illegal in this state, and we want a declaration that that's unconstitutional. But these were just women and doctors who wanted to use contraception. And the court said, you're not going to be arrested for this. This law has been on the books since 1879. There's been one prosecution only, and that was 40 years ago. No one's ever gone to jail for this. And at this moment in time, and the court was correct about this, people are buying contraceptives in Connecticut drugstores every day, and no one's being arrested. So the court dismissed that case because there was no real threat of prosecution.
Oh, wow.
Wait, let me just finish. One of the doctors who brought that case then wanted to open a birth control clinic, a family planning clinic, a Planned Parenthood clinic. That's what Connecticut wanted to stop. When Connecticut tried to stop that, he filed suit. There was standing. The court heard the case. That's an extreme example where prosecution was unlikely. In this case, we know what Colorado is going to do. If she puts on her website that she won't do same-sex weddings, they're going to sue. They're going to prosecute. So the case is right. So that's
the case is right to take.
Yeah, the case. There was proper jurisdiction. I can't argue.
Okay, so here we are at the Supreme Court. This is a case, by the way, that is, in my opinion, not getting a lot of attention.
That's because this term is last term and this term. In the last two terms, the court is changing the galaxy. You know, it's overturning Roe. It's strengthening religion.
Galactical change is the phrase you would say is just.
I mean, this term, the court's going to end affirmative action. So, I mean, you know, there's all kinds of stuff going on. But it's an important case, Pete. And it should, and it's not an easy case. So I'm here to tell you, this is not an easy case. Let me give you an example. You're a stand-up comic. You might be able to relate to that. Imagine a stand-up comic who does events. And there's some kind of event, and you open yourself up to the public, hire me, I'm available. And some organization hires you, you don't want to do that event. And let's say there's a law that says you have to do that event. Your argument would be, wait a minute, you can't make me do an act do a performance that is all kinds of personal and artistic and creative to a group I don't want to do it to, that would violate your free speech rights. And you would make that argument, Pete. And
I would make that argument, and then they would offer more money, and then I would say something to the effect of, now we are talking.
Right. Yes. So this woman is saying, I don't want to express myself this way. But we have to balance that against a long interest in combating and fighting discrimination against LGBTQ folks and hundreds of years of public accommodation laws back to the common law in this 18th century, that if you open your shop to the public, you've got to serve all customers. That's what you have to do. There's a long common law tradition of that. The problem is those cases involve selling widgets or food or non-artistic creative endeavors. This is a creative artistic endeavor. So there's zero suspense as to how the case is going to come out. She's going to win. Mike Dorf on Law just this week wrote an interesting blog post where he said, we know how the case is going to come out, but there are broad ways of deciding it and narrow ways of deciding it. And I hope the court does a very narrow definition.
Just give me a real world situation where, based on the court's decision, I would be really affected if I were gay people would be really affected by this, because what you're saying is that they're going to create a legal framework so that people can turn away gay people on any number of different types of commerce.
What we're hoping for is a very narrow definition of expression, of what expression is. For example, I'm not sure baking a cake is expression. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's on the line. But designing a website,
yeah, that's your calling card. It's your business card. It's your
it's pretty clearly expression. Now, I don't want your audience to think this woman is abhorrent. She's expressing hate. She's a discriminator, and but in our country, people are allowed to non-violently express hate. We allow that under the First Amendment.
I don't want to be insensitive.
Yeah,
but who cares if this lady doesn't want to do a website? There's give me a reason why I should be concerned about how this is going to actually affect the lives of gay people who want to get married, or of anybody else.
I'm going to.
Okay.
First of all, put in race put in interracial marriage for same-sex marriage, and you start seeing the problem. There will be no place in Mississippi for interracial people to get married if the court were to say that, or there'll be no wedding vendors in Mississippi to help gay people get married if the court says that you cannot do a same-sex wedding for any reason you want, for any objection you want. And there's a legal argument that race is different, but I don't buy it. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. So that's what the race issue is lurking here, Pete. Trust me. The race issue is lurking. So that's one thing. So for example, Mike was saying in his blog post, hopefully the court writes this in a way that doesn't apply to race as well.
I feel like we should have why don't we just throw it all away and create a court, you and I can be on it, where we decide if two people are right for each other, regardless of race or sexual identity. We're just like, you guys aren't going to, there's no way you're going to make it. We talk to them a little bit, and then we say, we have decided you two people aren't good for each other. That's the America I want to live in.
So we've established I'm very sucky at technology. I'm actually pretty good at deciding when couples are going to work out.
Are you?
I'm not bad. So yeah, I'm not bad. I've had mostly victories, a couple losses. But I'm not bad. It's not my fault my first wife was gay. Like that, my radar was off.
Well, I don't know what you've wagered on Val and I, but for the bonus material for subscribers, we'll expose where he has been on that. All right, let me ask you: is there anything else to belabor about this case, or can we move on to case number 2?
So the only thing I want to say is, in a normal term, this case would be a blockbuster. It's a big case, Pete. It's big because because of the race issue, because of the religious issues that are underlying all this. But we can move on because Wednesday's case might actually end our country. So that being the case,
well, there's something to celebrate about. I would like to be the Northeast America. But
let's go on to Moore versus Harper to be decided on Wednesday. I'm sure most of your listeners have heard about the so-called Independent State Legislature Doctrine, ISL. And this is where it comes from. It comes from Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, which I want to read, Pete, because it's important people really understand what's going on. Okay. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. That's the constitutional provision at issue. What it basically says in normal English language is state legislatures will prescribe the time, place, and manner of elections, including all the things we've been fighting about for years, about voting rights in terms of photo ID and the crazy Georgia laws about Sunday voting and all that stuff. And most importantly, redistricting. So what happened in this case was North Carolina gerrymandered its map horribly because the North Carolina legislature is Republican. And then the state Supreme Court, under state law, not federal law, under state law, said that map was illegal under our own law.
The North Carolina Supreme Court said of the map that had been gerrymandered, this is in violation.
Yes, of state law. It's important that it's state law, not federal law. The legislature is appealing that case to the United States Supreme Court. And what they're arguing is that the federal Constitution, that provision I just read to you, says that only a state legislature, not a state Supreme Court, nor a governor with a veto pen, can affect state elections. And this is why it's so important.
Can do anything about state elections. So this is why this is so important. I just read a Mark Elias. Have you ever had him on your show? He's great. He's I never had him on. I never even reached out to him, but he's the lawyer. He's a lawyer, and he is.
Yeah, he does great work. And by the way,
winning case after case, overturning against crazy Republican suits being brought. Yeah, I think most people probably know of his Mark Elias. And
more importantly, Rick Hasten, who has been on your show several times. Rick has been warning about this case for years before it was even filed.
Oh, no.
Rick has been just on this forever. They want a holding from the Supreme Court that state courts and state governors are not allowed to tell a state legislature the map you drew under state law is illegal under state law. And this is why it's so important. And forgive me if I get some of these numbers wrong. Michigan was malapportioned for a long time, like most states. But then they didn't. Because they hired they decided on an independent.
I'm sorry. What does malapportioned mean?
Wisconsin today is roughly 50-50 Republican Democrat. It varies, 50.3 to 4. Whatever.
People, registered voters.
Yeah. But the Wisconsin legislature is overwhelmingly Republican because they redistricted in a way to crack and pack minorities.
I got it.
Maryland is much more Democratic than it should be, given the population.
For the same reason.
For the same reason. And those are the two cases, Wisconsin and Maryland, that the court ruled in 2019, federal courts cannot get involved in this. In other words, the Supreme Court said it's a non-justiciable political question for federal courts to get in. There's no involvement in federal courts. So state courts are the only resort left. And state courts have been striking down these malapportioned maps. What the Republican Party wants, and what the Republican Party in North Carolina wants, is to take state courts out of this too, so that the legislature becomes omnipotent. And what that basically means is everything you've heard. There's a cliche about how we should elect people, they shouldn't elect the voters who elect them. Everything you've heard about that, this is another nail in the coffin of changing it, because independent redistricting commissions, like the one in Michigan that did its job and made the Michigan legislature roughly proportionate to the population of Michigan, which is great. That's what we want. We want rough proportionality. That would no longer be able to happen. That would be unconstitutional. And this is all, the only case this case is only here because of Karl Rove. Karl Rove, the Republican, whatever he was, consultant, whatever he was.
Bush's brain.
Say again?
Bush's brain.
Yes, but one of Bush's brains. He had several. This is one of them.
Right.
Dick Cheney was the other. Karl Rove engineered this redistricting in many states and after the 2000 census, when computers really for the first time could do this with incredible accuracy. So that's why more legislatures are gerrymandered for Republicans than for Democrats. Trust me when I tell you that if most state legislatures were gerrymandered for Democrats, this case wouldn't be here. Republicans wouldn't care. In fact, they'd be arguing the other side. Here's the thing, Pete. 3 justices in Bush versus Gore, just 3, not 5, 3, kind of hinted they would be for this, Scalia, Thomas, and Rehnquist.
Really? They hinted for this independent state legislature theory?
Yes. They didn't hint at it. They said it.
Thank God. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Did I know
and
that?
Let's not forget that John Roberts was one of the lawyers representing, and Amy Barrett, and Kavanaugh.
They worked on the case.
Yes.
My Lord in heaven, sweet Jesus, Joseph, and Mary.
Fuck shit, right?
Shit, I love when you do. We have to get that isolated. I love when you do that. Shit, fuck, shit, fuck. And we should just record it and have it be a drop. Go ahead.
So the co-founder of the Federalist Society, a law professor named, by the way, Pete is drinking beer as he's talking to me, which I don't know what I find this. I find this disturbing, maybe a little bit, but it's the weekend, so it's okay. Now, see, if I was drinking one of my pink drinks while you were drinking that, we'd have a lot more fun. We could do that.
I would ridicule you. You show so many hallmarks of a typical homosexual man. All of your interests, and yet you have seemingly been preferred women in your life.
I am clearly heterosexual and am married to the most beautiful women in the world.
Oh, your wife, I will say.
Don't say it.
She's just so great.
You can say that.
She's so wonderful in so many ways. Even
hey, we're talking about you and Pete saying you're wonderful. All right.
Anyway, go ahead.
So listen, Steve Calabresi, the co-founder of the Federalist Society and one of the most anti-abortion law professors in history, and he was right there when Ed Meese and he basically started this thing called the Federalist Society. Calabresi just filed a brief along with Akhil Amar, who's a famous Yale law professor and someone we should talk about sometimes. I have all kinds of things to say about him, but leaving that aside for the moment.
Let's do a whole thing on him one day.
And his brother, Vic Amar, who is the dean of a law school. The 3 of them, and 2 of those are liberals, wrote a brief in this court, in this case. It's the best amicus brief I've ever seen.
Come on now, son.
It is. And this is and so Nina Totenberg, for those who don't know,
a legend.
is a legend. She's the NPR Supreme Court correspondent.
Apparently close friends with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I didn't love that. I think that looked bad.
I just wrote about that this week. Did you see?
You did?
Yeah, I did.
I knew that.
You should read my stuff. Anyway, so Nina was interviewing Steve Calabresi about this case, and she introduced him on her radio, whatever she was doing, as the co-founder of the Federalist Society. And Calabresi said, Nina, I'm sorry, you can't call me that. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, the Federalist Society has told me when I do interviews about this case, I can't be introduced that way. And she said, what are you talking about? You were the co-founder of the Federalist Society, and you're an originalist. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, that's what they've decided. The reason the Federalist Society said that, Pete, is because this brief demolishes any possible legal basis for this lawsuit. This lawsuit is so frivolous, it is scary.
This brief, if you read this brief, which you say is the best of all time, it will. And not that I'm going to read some amicus, I don't even know how to pronounce it, brief, but you're saying, as someone who reads these, this is the best you've ever read, and it destroys the argument in this case.
You can go to, so anyone listening or watching can go to SCOTUS blog, look up Moore versus Harper, and scroll down to the brief of the Amar brothers and Steve Calabresi.
All right, listen. Fast forward. What is the independent state legislature theory? The Moore versus Harper. How are they going to decide, and what does it mean for my shed and my podcast?
I don't know how they're going to decide it.
Is that right?
If they, no, I don't. kind of explain the reason why this case is frivolous?
Sure.
Like 1 minute.
Oh, you want to explain why it's frivolous?
Yes. Why the idea is stupid and absurd.
Counselor?
The Constitution assigns responsibilities to a lot of different entities. Congress has the power to regulate commerce among the states. The president doesn't, only Congress does. The president is the commander in chief, not the Congress or the states, right? Go on and on and on. But every time the Constitution says something like that, of course, it's subject to other parts of the Constitution and subject to constitutional law. So, for example, the best way to explain this is, under its power to regulate commerce among the states, Congress could regulate the interstate shipment of newspapers for profit, because that's commerce among the states. But they can't do it in a way that violates the First Amendment. Republican newspapers get taxed more than Democrat newspapers. They can't do that because the First Amendment limits the commerce power. The rest of the Constitution limits what I read to you earlier. The times, place, and manners for holding elections shall be prescribed by the state legislature. Sure, but only if those rules are legal. And if those rules are illegal under state law, then they're illegal. And the North Carolina Supreme Court said, under state law, this map is illegal. And if that's true, then the state legislature acted illegally. And the North Carolina Supreme Court, and we know this for many, many reasons. But for those originalists out there, and Steve Calabresi is the original originalist,
is that right?
Co-founder of the Federalist Society, he said, if you go back to 1791, not that we care, but if you go back to 1791, what you will find out is states had two states, including New York, I believe, had judges who were partnering with the legislature in making election rules because the legislature asked them to. And that wasn't a violation of anything. In Arizona, there was this big scandal called the Abscam scandal, where the FBI found all kinds of corruption in Arizona. After that, the people, through a referendum, appointed an independent redistricting commission, which the court upheld 5-4, with Justice Roberts writing his second most angry dissent in history. The point being, Pete, what the word legislature means is whatever the people of the state decide.
What do you mean what the word legislature means?
Well, that's the whole word. The whole case turns on that word. The whole case turns on that word. The whole case. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. This isn't complicated. They're arguing what that means is courts and governors, state courts, state governors, cannot do election stuff. Only the legislature can. But that's not what that says, and it's not what it means, and no one never thought it meant.
How will this affect our elections, or how will it end our country, as you said, with your hyperbolic rhetoric? Because
let's take North Carolina. North Carolina, that's the actual case. North Carolina's first map that was declared illegal by the state Supreme Court was offensively horrible fuck shit. Like it was just, Pete, I mean, it was just, I believe the district court, Texas has redistricted in ways that are fuck shit. And frankly, Maryland has redistricted in ways that are fuck shit. Fuck shit. I can't do this with you laughing. I can't. I just can't do it with you laughing.
Fuck shit with Eric Segall, everybody. Coming at you.
No, I mean, legislatures redistrict to get reelected. It's what they do, of course, obviously, which is why we need independent redistricting commissions who won't do it that way. But anyway, if the court rules the way that the Republican Party wants it to rule, then there'll be no check on the state legislature. And if there's no check on the state legislature, even by governors and state Supreme Courts, and federal courts already are out of this, pursuant to a very controversial 5-4 Supreme Court decision, which is Justice Kagan's angriest dissent of her career. No courts can get involved, ever, in redistricting. Pete, that is a nightmare for democracy.
Why?
It is not what?
Why?
I just told you. if the North Carolina legislature can redistrict any way it wants,
yes,
without regard to the law,
they can just draw every district just where the Republicans live.
So in Georgia, for example,
they can gerrymander the F out of every state in the country.
Yes.
If they have control of that state's legislature, and if they get control of that state's legislature and then that state's elections, they will, as who was it, the guy running for Wisconsin or somewhere said, if you elect me, we'll never relinquish control ever again. Because
the governor of Wisconsin said, there'll never be a Democrat governor.
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about here? Yes. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a break and read a word from our sponsor. Shit, fuck. Folks, sometimes you'll drop coffee on a brand new crisp white shirt and you'll scream, shit, fuck. And sometimes democracy will die right in your lap. And it's a similar.
Let's be clear. What has led to I've written 2 blog posts this week, then about 6 podcasts, and I am at my wit's end with the Supreme Court. I'm almost ready. I'm 65 next June. I am almost ready. In the last 2 years, I mean, the court's always been terrible, but in the last 2 years, last year and this year, this court is going to change the country in so many fundamental ways that is so inappropriate for unelected life tenure judges to do. It's like the Warren Court times 50. It's like, me, I'm not a fan of the Warren Court. I think the Warren Court I'm a progressive, did way too much, including Roe, which I think was way too much.
Wow.
I've always said that.
I know.
That's nothing compared to the last 2 terms of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and here's the thing. Donald Trump this morning, we're taping this on Saturday, Donald Trump this morning.
He said the Constitution should be thrown out.
Yes. The Constitution should be thrown out and I should be named president. Is basically what he said. And that's what he said.
Yeah, he did. He said we should have a redo of the election.
So people, and this is creating a lot of humor, and that's fine. I get that. I get why it's humorous. Pete, it's now 5:39. That tweet came out, I think, at 8 o'clock this morning or 9 o'clock. Yeah. Have we heard Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell, or any top Republican say that the front runner for the 2024 presidential race in the Republican Party and the former president is calling for the literal taking apart of our Constitution?
Let
me finish this point. This is the most precarious time in America, I think, probably since the Civil War. Probably. We are really, I'm not being, okay, time, shit, fuck's over. I'm being serious. And I warned you about this. It makes me mad because I warned you. I said, if Donald Trump becomes president, this is a phrase I used on your show 50 times. It's a bet your country election. We may lose our country. And you laughed at me and you said I was wrong and you were wrong and I was right. It's a bet your country thing. And I don't know if Kevin McCarthy believes in democracy. Do you?
No, of course he doesn't. He believes in power and maintaining it.
No, but Pete, look, so did Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a horrible politician. But he believed in democracy. Ed Meese used to believe in democracy.
No, this is over. That's over. Those guys are
right. So my point, which is my point. At this moment in time, in this case, the Supreme Court needs to say the following: this country was built on. This is why Steve Calabresi is so important to this, co-founder of the Federalist Society. Because he has there's so many things he does that are wrong, but he's also an honest guy. He even was for same-sex marriage bans. I mean, he was in favor of Obergefell. What Calabresi is saying, and what is true, is we need checks and balances now more than ever. More than ever, this country needs checks and balances.
Well, I think that's why Amy Coney Barrett and Samuel Alito are on the court, not to mention Kavanaugh and the rest. I mean,
and so
Gorsuch.
The court needs to recognize
they're stepping up. They're going to step up and they're going to save America. These conservatives that likes of you and your colleagues, your lib colleagues, your cuck soy boys have been critical of. These guys are going to step up. They realize, given the midterm elections, and we realize, given your scholarship, the court is not a court. And they realize, given the midterm elections, that these people have gotten too extreme. They've gone too far. and they're the conservatives on the court, including your boy Clarence Thomas. They're going to save us.
No, wrong. Thomas is going to rule in favor of this theory, dissenting. I'm 98% sure. 98%. Thomas has already expressed that he likes this theory.
Did you see?
3 of them have.
Can I ask you random questions now?
I would love that. Let's get out the Supreme Court. Fuck, shit, sit in the Supreme Court. How's that? Shortish
answers. Take your time. But what do you think of this whole Kanye, Nick Fuentes, Elon Musk, Twitter? Like, what's happening here in December in America? Matt Taibbi and the whole thing with the Biden, Hunter Biden, all of it.
So a recurrent. You want a soundbite? I don't. My soundbite answer is: I think I've never in my life been the subject of anti-Semitism that I know of, and I am not. I don't consider myself Jewish, as you know, though my parents were. I think anti-Semitism is going to be a real problem in this country, and we should. And it's already a real problem in this country.
It sounds like you're the real problem for.
Well, I've been accused of being anti-Semitic. That's fair. I'm not. I'm a little bit anti-Israel, but I'm not anti-Semitic.
Wow, that's a country. That's a whole different pile.
Exactly. Well, I tried to make that argument, and then I got yelled at by my friends. But anyway.
Let Dave Rothkopf make it. He's pretty good.
Dave's great.
Yeah.
Dave's
okay, awesome. So go ahead and
anyway, I hope Kanye. I don't know anything about Kanye's music, so I'm not that a fan of that genre. There are people I respect who think his music was amazing, like just path-breaking generational music, And if that's true, I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, this is so sad. And he's so obviously sick. I mean, he's so obviously demented and sick and in the public eye. I have a question for you, Pete Dominic. Just last week, I saw Tucker Carlson basically sucking Kanye West's dick. So what does Tucker Carlson do now? Do we just let it fly? Does he get to go on TV after sucking his dick? And now that Kanye has said, I like Hitler, or Hitler wasn't all bad, or whatever he said, what do we do with Tucker Carlson now, Pete? That's my question.
What do we do with Tucker Carlson? He continues to do what he's doing. He's doing great.
But that's insane. He just had a pro-Hitler guy in his show.
He is a king maker. But I think that while he's going to continue to dominate ratings and be very, very dangerous, and there's going to be violence, consistent violence, where people are going to be targeted because of their race.
You have a shed, so that's good.
Well, I mean, part of the problem with liberal Democrats is that they actually don't have anything to selfishly fear. And so they don't necessarily act on certain things and advocate because, things in my neighborhood are pretty good. And so I'm not going to stir things up. But given...
Did you just say, wait a minute, hold on, back up. Sorry, you're not getting away with that. You forgot who you were talking to. Did you just tell your audience that you're not going to stir things up in your neighborhood? Shall I cross-examine you on that?
No. I said I did.
You did say that.
I stirred things up in my neighborhood, and I got targeted, as you know, and I got, I got punished for it, and I would do it again. And it's the best thing I've been involved with is the local activism here in my mid 40s. But the thing that frustrates me is that some of the people in my category and my lane and my community didn't step up, because the point is their lives continue to be good. So a lot of these Supreme Court decisions that we talk about don't necessarily affect people. Well, they don't affect people the same way. And I think that's what matters.
Right. So you asked me a question. Can I ask you a question? Rapid round.
Oh,
have you ever considered the fact that I'm old enough to be your father?
Yes, I've thought about our relationship probably more than I'm comfortable talking about. I literally talked about my friendship with you last night with Val.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, as an example, Eric Segall, blah, 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 blah. We were having a thoughtful exchange about male friendships, relationships, and we were talking about how people meet each other, how men meet each other, and I was talking about how many amazing people I've met through hosting this show.
Yeah.
And I was
7 seconds ago. 7 seconds ago, you leaned forward in your seat and you froze. And I'm mentioning that point to circle back to the beginning of this 56-minute, whatever it is, podcast, when you made fun of me for technology. And I just want to point out that your whole audience will see that about a minute and 7 seconds ago, you froze. Just pointing it out.
This is why you should never even make a joke like that about technology, because my whole audience won't see that, because it froze for you because of your internet connection, but it didn't freeze for the audience, and now you have egg on your face, sir.
You know what I say about that? Fuck, shit.
Eric Segall, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, there he goes. Go find him on TikTok and on Twitter at eSpinSegall. Listen to his podcast, Supreme Myths. Read his books. Support him every way you can, as I always love to. It is another great conversation in the books with Eric Segall, as well as Maura Quint. Thank you very much for joining me and supporting me. And you can hear Maura join us on Thursday night at the Hangout if you're a subscriber. If you're not, go to standupwithpete.com right now and sign up and support this independent podcast. Hey, it's free, but it isn't cheap. I put a lot into it, and I could really use your subscription. So thank you to all of those who have subscribed. So grateful to those of you who keep subscribing, who edit your pledge up. I can't thank you enough. You can always pay more, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to be done talking now. John Carroll, please sing us out, brother.
The devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Oh, got to stand